going to talk about the 2-year itch of manufacturing and getting hard products to market and how that happens, and tell us a little bit about what the cool things happen in Panasonic. With that,
all right,
it's all yours.
Thanks, Ray. Hello, nice to see you guys here. Thanks for coming out. So my name is Bob Christopher. I'm an entrepreneur. I built a hardware company called Yagobi here in Oakland, downtown in Frank Agah Plaza. And we made this guy right here, which is Pleo. I'll show you that in a few minutes. And we started back in 2006 and raised capital from people around here, from China, all around the world. But we were like, we were very lonely. There's no other hardware companies around besides Leapfrog, so we didn't really have much to kind of commiserate. And we learned a lot along the way in how to build a company, which became really the idea of the 2-year itch. So, with that said, let me jump into it. This is my lessons learned. And kind of a brief note, I raised $26 million. I built a company and a product we sold worldwide, from Russia to Beijing to Europe to here to South America. To this day, Pleo is being sold in over 34 countries. It's being manufactured in China, of course, and it's got a big fan base. And we have lots of stories to talk about Pleo. We were out to create a robot that was lifelike, that was not a robot. It was actually what we call the life form. And my co-founder was Caleb Chung, who invented the Furby. So Caleb was very knowledgeable about animatronics, and we had created a way to biomimic organic movement, basically a mocap suit that was modified to replicate center of gravity and all the motions of whoever's inside the mocap suit onto a robot. And we patented that, which now is being violated but we patented that. That's actually a pretty cool patent. And we created what we think is a magical experience, which is Pleo. So if you ever had a chance, you probably don't know what Pleo is because it hasn't been in the media in the last couple of years, but Google search it, you'll see it. It's a big fan base of Pleo owners, and it's a really cool product. Okay, so the reason why I'm here is to tell the stories of how we made this work and why we didn't become the next Dropcam, which obviously is out there. Anyway, so the 2-year itch. Let me just walk you guys through it quickly. Obviously, Panasonic, my company, innovation. So I'm looking for innovators. I'm working with innovators in Panasonic. More about that later. Blue Sprout, which is here, and Mead Kitchen, which is out here. So this is Pleo under the skin. Pleo has 1,800 parts, 14 servos, a lot of gears, a lot of stuff. And 4 CPUs. 2 in the head alone. So we had 1 for the camera and audio, and part of our AI was split up between the head, actually, and the body. We delegated tasks. Pleo was an autonomous being. It learned on its own. It didn't need remote control. It had an evolving AI and emotional engine, so it could actually, if you abused it, it would grow scared. And scared of you. If you were friendly to it, it'd become more social. Those are just 2 extreme examples, but Pleo was very much a lifelike relationship that we created. So, this was very hard to get into manufacturing. I mean, this was a bitch. So, what Pleo turned out to be is this guy, which is this magical creature that we know today. That's Pleo. So Pleo recognizes things in its mouth, it recognizes leads, it recognizes objects. It can hear, it has touch sensing, it has tilt sensing, it's force feedback and potentiometers in its joints. It knows if it's being abused or being loved. Because that's kind of the major experience we wanted to create with Pleo. So, the premise here is Eric from Pebble. It takes 2 years of retail sales to build a successful consumer device company. That's the theory, and that's from our experience. So why? This is Fitbit's scale. To harmonize retail sales with operations, that's the stuff that makes it holds a company together. With manufacturing and finance, you need 2 years of experience to really make it work. So you may have all the answers going into it, knowing, but until you hack it and do it and experience it, you're going to have to fine-tune it along the way. It's a very rough journey the first 2 years. So that's the premise of the To-Your Itch. So the way I look at this, there's two elements of your business model. There's the cost element, manufacturing, and there's a revenue element, which is retail or channel sales. So these are your two elements of your business model. No matter what you're doing, if you're selling into healthcare or enterprise or whatever you're doing, or selling into consumer, you still have that revenue model here and your manufacturing cost model here. So the core of your model, as we found out, is cash flow, having enough cash to finance your inventory and to pay your bills. So manufacturing obviously is a big thing. There's so many ins and outs in manufacturing. Greg can tell you, manufacturing is an art. You have to really know how to negotiate deal terms with manufacturers. We partnered eventually with Foxconn, which is the biggest manufacturer in the world. They put money into us. And negotiating with those guys is like negotiating with, somebody you don't want to negotiate with. It's a huge company. And they have like thousands of IP attorneys that look for ways to steal I shouldn't say this out loud, but look for ways to, look for innovation from you. Thankfully, they invested in us, so they were not doing that, but anyway, they told us that they look for innovation. So really, there's a lot to be said about this, and getting a really good manufacturing resource is golden to you. So right now the Highway 1 guys are flying out Friday to Shenzhen for 10 days, or 2 weeks I think it is, to go and meet with all the PCH manufacturing resources. And they don't need to be there 2 weeks, but it's a good immersive relationship, and they're going to find out about the ecosystem over there and how you talk to manufacturers, how you set up manufacturing lines, the nuances of components and approved vendor lists that really people don't think about. There's a lot that we learned in the process, and it was really kind of scary. But we negotiated good deal terms, and we got a good float from a manufacturer, so they could float us for 45 days in some instances, which is what you need. Anyway, so this is really the lifeblood relationship of your company. I'm advising a couple of robot companies. One's Jibo, which is raised $2.2 million on the Indiegogo, and they're right now facing a manufacturing crunch, and it's just like everyone else out there. It's such a big thing to do, and Greg Duffy from Dropcam will say the same thing. It was a big hassle for those guys to get into manufacturing and really set the processes up, and there's a lot more to that, but this is the big thing in your business model. Retail. So, retail is changing so much today. People kind of poo-poo it. They say, and I don't blame them, because retail is a bitch to deal with. They give you bad deal terms. They string you out on your payments. They'll say, come here, talk to us. We love your product. Come sell it at Best Buy. Come sell it at Apple. But we're not going to pay you for it until it sells. And then you got to float that product in their channel. And sometimes they're nice to you. They'll give you upfront money. They'll give you better deal terms. If you sell off the shelf in a good rate, they'll shorten their payment cycle to you, so they'll reward you with better payment. But if you don't sell at a high velocity, they'll string you out. And there's a lot, my friends rep products in the Apple retail, and I go to them sometimes and talk to the guys at Apple and Cupertino, and I hear what they say about stuff. And they have the job to do. They can't marry the relationship with you. They're under a lot of pressure. But the problem is you don't see that, you don't know that, and you get these relationships going, and they can pull you. And so it's really important to manage that relationship. They're big in analytics, of course. A lot of people these days are going direct to consumers. They're building online channels. Our friends over at PlayEye that make Bo and Yana, which has been now relabeled to Dash and Dot, I think it is. They make the robots that teach kids how to program on iPads. They raised $1.5 million on Self-Starter, and they raised, I think, up to $10 million now on Series A. But they're all about going direct to consumer. They're trying to avoid retail. And I don't blame them, but it's hard to scale going direct to consumer without some type of channel play. So, cash flow, I already said, this is really what makes your company work. So we raised $26 million over the course of 4 rounds. And I had the CFO that worked for me who ran finance for Leapfrog. So she knew what she was doing. And at one moment in time, we had everything dialed in. We had our distributors in Russia and Berlin and England and Italy and elsewhere paying us deposits. So we get deposits on orders. Then we get the shipment from China. And we would float the shipment on the water without paying it. And then eventually would land in country, and we'd have 10 to 15 days to make the payment, which was great. So we could afford to float a lot of product on the water. Using the air back then was not, we really couldn't use the air, was too expensive, so we all used the water. But today air can be a little bit cheaper based on bulk freight. So we had this, we really had to watch this cash flow. When the world economy went shitty, like, 4 or 5 years ago, everything tightened up. All of a sudden, the distributors would not give you a deposit, and the factory would not float you terms. So all of a sudden, your window went from like this to this, having as in us financing it, which was like really difficult, especially if you're selling, hundreds of thousands of products a year. So anyway, my point is, to really manage this to your itch, you need a strategy that lets you figure this out and anticipate the speed bumps along the way, and in many cases, the potholes. So I know a lot of you guys are makers and probably engineers. Product development is such a key element of your company. So it brings all of your team together. Even if if there's a finance person, a customer support person, you're still in the same room, and you're living, breathing, and thinking product development. Even if you're not actually writing code, you're still thinking about it. And it's such a big piece of the company culture. You got to get your product development set and figure out your boundaries for how you want to deal with product development and iterations. It'll really help you set up your company ecosystem. Okay, so my little shtick here tonight is this thing I call it the 7 pillars of success. How we did it well, and what we would have done, changed if we had to, or could have, I should say. So they're all right here. I'll go through them one at a time. But we look back and say, we know we did some things really, really well. We built demand. We sold a lot of products. We did that very well. We built brand. We did that very well. We built channel. We did that very well. So we know we actually did the push-out stuff really well. And so we look back, and I look now at Indiegogo, Kickstarter, and else, and that's kind of what we did without using those tools. So that stuff works, and I reflect on it in my methodology here. But I also think about the things that we did. And I'm an open book in terms of what we did do well. So I'm happy to answer questions towards the end of the presentation. So this is what I call the money moment, which really is your crowdfunding, Indiegogo, Kickstarter, product validation the VCs will want you to have. So you sell 100,000 products on Indiegogo, maybe you sell more than that. You have this pre-order money coming in. And now you have to go build something. And that's called the money moment. Because now you have to actually write a big check and put something into manufacturing. So it goes from kind of like hobbyist world to a little bit more big time world when you go from crowdfunding to manufacturing. So what happens is you need a manufacturer and you need people that are going to buy it, or in this case, your channel retail sales. So this is what I call the consumer moment, is how do you deliver the promise of what you sold on Indiegogo to your consumer at the very end? And how do you not violate their schedule? So not push something off 2 years like Lockatron, or do other things that would piss off your community. So there's that consumer moment. So there's 7 pillars, and I Actually, there's 8 here because I put one in towards the end, but never mind. And I'll go walk through them in the next slides. But these are the pillars that make up the process of going from here to consumer and scaling. So it really, what I call it is, it's either the moment where you scale or you fail. So everyone knows what community is. Back in 2006, people didn't really know what community was. It wasn't like a big term. And so we learned that community and the cloud connected everything together. So we had this approach that said, look, our core tenet of our company is we want to be like the old Apple. The Apple when Steve Jobs had long hair and was actually a cool guy, or at least we think he was. And Apple then was trying to become really open, transparent, and just for the people, just really having a good experience for the community. And we thought, we should be like that. We should be open, we should be transparent. If we have a problem with production or product development, we should just say it. Just admit it. And just share it with the community. Because it'll buy us goodwill, it'll buy us credibility. And it did, but it was a really kind of radical thought back then. Anyway, it paid off, and what we really learned from all this in building community is to be transparent with customers, even when you're not right. I don't know how many of you right now are actually selling product live into the world, and how many of you actually have customers? Any show of hands? A few? Okay. Do you engage your customers with feedback? Do you share your developments with them? Probably do, right? Okay, so there's lots of benefits to that. We had things like with Pleo, the paint would start flaking off and chipping, and then the teeth were painted white, started chipping, and it looked bad. It looked like Pleo had somebody punched it. And it's just like this really ugly scene. So we said, forgive us. We had a manufacturing mistake. We have a little kit we're going to send you for free that's going to help you paint Pleo and fix all the stuff that's bad with Pleo versus replacing it. And people did it. It was great because they paint their Pleos and clean it up. It was us saying, hey, please forgive us for the mistake, and here's how we're going to help you solve it. The cloud was not used as much back then. We used a group called Lithium, which is in Emeryville. That was kind of our community managers. And so today you don't need that. You can use other groups like Indiegogo and other community platforms. I also then suggest now today's world is host hackathons and build your developer community. It's such a key element of any hardware product. So this is an example of that. So Pebbles, this is their hackathon. Not sure if you can see that. So my friend is helping lead the third-party development for developers, and they do things like this, and they're trying to build their ecosystem. So these are 2 products that I recently helped launch in the market as an advisor and actively helping them. So this is, do you guys recognize this at all? Do you guys recognize Bo?
Yep.
This is PlayEye. This is, they're located down in the San Mateo. This is Jibo. Recognize this at all? Guys, no? You guys aren't robot people, really?
Yeah.
So Jibo is a lifelike robot that's built by Cynthia Brazil, who's the MIT Media Lab professor who's known for creating Kismet and Leonardo. Vikas Gupta of PlayEye raised $1.5 million on Self-Starter, and he reflected on what made him successful and why they did it. He's a big analytics guy. So his thing was these major points: basically optimize your website, build audience, host demo meetups. So he went out to Cisco and Microsoft and Google and Facebook and got all these parents, super excited about the product, and built little user groups at these companies that parents who wanted to teach their kids how to program. So they got early looks at PlayEye's product. And then they started talking about it inside the company. So all of a sudden Google had like over 1,000 people in Google who wanted to buy Play iRobots, and they did. Microsoft, and the list goes on. They did a really good job kind of doing grassroots audience development. Pitch the press, that's obvious. Offer perks to early buyers, it's pretty standard stuff. You know, customize, release exciting stretch goals, and remarket, basically growth hacking to your customers. So I helped lead the crowdfunding campaign for Jibo. I orchestrated the whole thing for Cynthia. And we did this, this is my first, well, I did Ugobi and Pleo, but my first crowdfunding campaign from scratch. And we raised 2.2 million, almost 2.3 million in the time. So it's one of the top 1 or 2 crowdfunding campaigns on Indiegogo. You know, it was a lot of hacking. We were testing and adjusting, and it was a lot of fun but stressful. But we got to this point, and we learned a lot along the way. And the community is big. This is 4,800 people now who are part of the community of Jibo.
What's Jibo do?
Jibo's a family robot. It's basically a companion. It's like your digital assistant for the house. You come home, asks you how you are because it recognizes you, has cameras, it can hear, you can talk to you. It's not walking around, it's only on the table, but it has 3 separate gear systems, planetary gear systems, so it has complete expression, motion, like if you had an articulating neck, so it can tilt, look at you, be curious, be sad, be expressive. So when it talks to you, looks at you, it shows emotions. But the idea is it's taking responsibility off your plate and helping you figure things out. Like, I need to order pizza. Okay, I'll order pizza for you. Tell me, call my mom. Okay, I'll call her for you. It's just basically a robot companion. It's also like a friend and kind of a pet. All those things get wrapped into one. Cynthia Brazil's, her whole premise is robots and technology need to become more lifelike, to be more like us so we can actually have a relationship with it, because it'll make our lives more interesting and more fulfilling. So, Jibo. So this is really something that we set, this is manufacturing, cloud, retail, company vision. So we were taught in 2004 that you had to build a narrative. You had to build a story. So why are you doing this? So think about making a movie. If you make a movie, you have to create a film trailer to tell people what the movie's all about. The story is about, for us, they said, you need to become not just about the robot itself, but what are you doing? Like, what are you creating? And so we thought about the idea that we're creating life forms that are going to create lifelike relationships with people, and that's going to make the world better. And the media and the press loved that. They thought that was really cool. And then that created really a lot of interesting press interviews and experiences. But that vision, I mean, I don't know, maybe it doesn't sound as interesting and sexy as everything else, but that is so core to your business. If you don't have a good narrative and a good vision, you're not going to get funded, you're not going to sell a lot of product. I mean, it's just a lot of things kind of flow from that. Okay, so I'll say the details, but you don't want to your vision's not about basically how cool you are. It's what you stand for. Why are you here? And creating emotional belief in your product. So that's what sales and people spending money is about, emotionally believing in what you do. So this happens all the time. You produce something and you need to update it. And it has a flaw. You have a bad sensor, a poor performing motor, something's breaking a lot. You need to create an iteration path with the manufacturer to adjust it. So places like Blue Sprout, and this is not necessarily a planned plug, but you need small batch manufacturing like this to really flesh out your design flaws. Because you're going to have them. Everyone has them. And then eventually you get those things figured out, and then you can blow it out and mass produce it. But you're going to have design flaws. I don't care how good your team is or where they come from. if they're ex-Apple engineers, I don't care. It's going to have design flaws. I mean, I'm aware of 4 companies right now that I'm mentoring, and I know everyone has design flaws along the way, and some are in manufacturing right now in China. So it's just, you will drive your manufacturer crazy, and they'll stop talking to you, and they'll charge you a lot extra money for their time if you bug them every week and say, I need to change something. I need to change something. I need to change the tooling. I need to change the part. They're going to go time out. No way. Because the big ones like Foxconn won't even talk to, because they don't work like that. Small ones like Jetta will work with you like that every 2 or 3 weeks, if at the most. But so you can't, you're going to make mistakes, but you have to realize that there's a process for how you update those mistakes in your design. And it's expensive. They're going to charge you money for their time in redesigning it. So this is kind of a side note. Whenever you start your company and you innovate on your idea, it's like you've got this really cool idea, you're building it into this really cool product, and everyone just thinks it's awesome. And then you get some money, and you launch the company, and you hire people. And now you're like 10 people, now you're 30 people, now you're 40 people. And all of a sudden, people say, well, we should probably have like a meeting to talk about it, right? Let's have a meeting to talk about the next design change, or the next iteration on this, or the next this, or whatever. And all of a sudden you get this like, I'm sorry, it's the shit of building a big company. It gets dysfunctional. And you have this, just committee bureaucracy. And the way to get through that, you still need to involve your team, but the way to get through that is to have what I call core tenets. What are the 3 to 5 things that define your product and your company? What is it, if you looked out at yourself in the outside world, what do you want people to think about you? Are you helping the environment? Are you always creating a delightful, awesome experience? Are you creating a wow factor through a certain type of technology? What is it you're trying to do? And every product that you design or improve should go through those filters. Because you can have lots of your team members say, we should do this. These guys did this over here. It's awesome. We should be just like that. You can be like, well, should we? Should we put like an antenna on it? I mean, should we put like, should it articulate? And unless you have your core tenets figured out, you're going to be pulled in different directions all the time. I know some design teams at Apple that confidentially are having this issue right now because you're getting lots of people inside Apple who are just having lots of opinions, and they're having to think this through right now. And there's core tenets Apple has, but there's not really core tenets that this particular department has. It can slow everything down and complicate it. So create core tenets and be completely faithful to them. I mean, religiously to them, until you think they're flawed, and then change them. But that's like your narrative for your company and your core tenets for how you guys look at innovation and product experience. That defines your company right there. That's it. That's your company. You can be wickedly smart and innovative, but unless you get those things right, you're going to be schizophrenic. So the way we learn, so retail, again, can pull you in different directions, and the way that we did was we basically teased retail. We didn't give them what they wanted. Don't give retail what they want. Don't give them. Don't make them starve them. Pull it back. Don't be afraid to say no to them or say no, we can't do that, because they're going to bully you. Even as nice as they are, they're going to bully you. And so you have to pull back and let them come to you. You don't want to be completely, don't be an enemy that says you can't have anything. But if you decide to go retail, spoon feed them until you get to know the process and the teams and so on. Just really be careful about this. So they call it managing retail shrink. Shrink your inventory on the retail shelf. Digital shelf and, of course, physical shelf. Amazon is going to pull you for a ride. And you got to be careful about that. So you just have to push back and manage their expectations. Especially if you have crowdfunding. Crowdfunding, you've got, they know you have an audience. They can't push back on you too much. It's like, you know what? You really think you have my consumer? I have my consumer. I know what they want. And you have the data on the consumer. You know who they are. You know how they're buying. That's golden. That's great. So again, manage retail shrink. Now, by the way, I still think you should do retail. Retail in Europe is like so much better than here. They'll pay you up front. They'll promote your product correctly. They're nice to you. At least in most cases, they're nice to you. We went through distributors in Europe because we wanted money up front so we used the Apple iPod distributor in Italy. We used the Sony Vaio distributor in Russia. We used the TomTom distributor in Germany. But with really good distributors who know how to sell and promote high quality product. And but the retailers were awesome. They're so much different over there than they are here. Here they're just tough. They're tough. So manufacturing it's really important to not get ahead of yourself. You're going to have people want your product, hopefully. You're doing a great job promoting and selling it. And you're going to be like, let's go. Let's just push the button and go. Let's build 10,000, 100,000 of these things. You've got to be careful about that because the moment you're not selling them off the shelf and your money's not coming in fast, you're going to have issues where manufacturers are going to squeeze you. And they're going to hold shipment and not deliver it to you. And so and then they start changing terms on you. Now you don't get net 15 or net 30, you get net 10. And they charge you storing fee for your product sitting on pallets in their warehouse that you are not moving for them. And now that becomes a cost burden on top of your bill of materials to you. So what you want manufacturing to do is be hungry to work with you and kind of almost like retail, but you want them also to give you good terms. And what you do with it's really kind of it's an art. Think of it this way: you want to be the kid on the block that everyone wants to ride the bicycle with, or ride the bicycle. You want to be that person with a shiny bicycle, and if they know your product is selling, and retail wants it as well, they'll bend for you. And they'll know there's moments in time you're not going to be selling a lot because of the target season or whatever. But as long as you don't get too overambitious with them and you manage this relationship, you can underwrite manufacturing and be okay. Again, this gets into cash flow, which is really your lifeline of your company. I mean, your financing lifeline. So this is like everybody has this problem, and it's really basically R&D is engineering is manufacturing. So people that do R&D, that do your product, that iterate and innovate, are the same people who work on the product that goes into manufacturing. And guess what? It's a different world. Because when you iterate and develop and innovate on something, that's what you need to do. But then you need to change your process, you need to change your discipline, you need to change how you look at things to talk to the manufacturing world. And, so Leapfrog was our model for this. They used people in Hong Kong to basically onboard staff from Emeryville. And their Hong Kong team was product engineers and manufacturing engineers who would take a complete handoff from Emeryville to Hong Kong, and they would then begin a whole design for manufacturing process, which was not involving guys back in Emeryville. Because it's a different language, a different skill. So your manufacturers will expect that kind of process. And, usually when you're a small company, you can't afford to have lots of people. So you kind of have to wear many hats. This is the part that probably is the most difficult to scale on, because your core team is more on this side over here and less on that side. So Greg Duffy from Dropcam and I had a discussion 3 months ago, and before they got bought, and one of the things that he was having a challenge was that his R&D/marketing team knew what the mojo was that Dropcam should have. What should we do? How should it behave? What's the experience of Dropcam? All the things that they felt were valuable to them. And then they go over to China, and they would everything get lost in translation. I mean, not, language, but lost in knowing what they wanted. And it was a big challenge, and it probably still is for those guys. It's probably the same thing for Nest. This handoff is never easy, because you don't think these guys understand you, and then those people don't think you know what you're talking about. And so it's just I look at Greg because I know he lives in that world.
I'm saying hallelujah in my mind, it's so true. And just to that point, I think, when you can't, most people can't do that as far as having a team that can separate that. So you really have to have that very discrete change in your mind between, hey, this is R&D and it's about iteration and brainstorming and opening all the boundaries. And then you go to manufacturing, it's exactly the opposite. It's about pulling back, it's about limiting yourself, It's about saying these are the limits of everything that we can do.
It's true. Foxconn, the team who worked out at Foxconn was really interesting. They were the Apple team. So Terry Gao, who owns Foxconn, put personal money, 15 of his own money, 15 million in my company, because I talked him into it. It's a story behind that, but he's I want my best team on this. I want to build these robots. I love robots. So he got H.L. Chung and the team from Apple who designed and built this thing originally, and the iPod, to work on Pleo. So I had this awesome team. And oh my gosh, the phone calls of those guys. They were so on it. They're still like machines. And they're like, what's with your R&D team? Why don't they know what this is? Don't they know the handoff here? And it was really painful to see my super smart R&D team who were saying, don't these guys get it? We don't want Pleo to do this. We want it to do this. But Foxconn was thinking about, well, how do you make it efficiently and make it reliably so it doesn't break? And so there'd be all these back and forth. Thankfully the Foxconn team was really cool, and we eventually synthesized the two. But what I had to do is I actually had to hire some people out of Apple as part-time contractors to sit in my R&D facility and work with my team, and then go over to Longhua, China. Longhua is the big Foxconn factory, and work with the factory and set the production line up and set the engineering up. It was like this completely literal handoff back and forth with Apple people. So it was like I was paying. They're not cheap, and so I paid a lot of money for that help. But I saw that, and I don't know if you guys get to Hong Kong or not, but there's a group called Jetta. Jetta makes Pleo. They make Roomba vacuum cleaner. They make the Sphero ball. They make now Play-Eye. They make Anki, I think now they made. So they make a lot of the movable robots, things that actually have actuators and whatever sensors in them. And so we're working with these guys. This little side story. Working with these guys on building Pleo, and then and so I met Terry Gao in Taiwan because we did this big press event. And long story, we met, and he said, "I'll put money in you guys on the manufacturer." Like, oh, we have this group in Hong Kong called Jetta manufacturing for us. I said, oh, okay. Well, I'll send my team over to Hong Kong and we'll talk to them. Well, it turns out they went to Hong Kong and they made an offer to buy Jetta for several $1 billion because they wanted to buy the team, buy the knowledge, and literally turn Jetta into Foxconn. And T.C. Chen owns Jetta. He's a proud Hong Kong wealthy man himself. Said no. And from that point forward, we had two manufacturing lines, one in Panyu, China, Jetta, and one in Longhua, China, Foxconn. And my team was not allowed to commingle with each other because both owners didn't like each other, and they were totally suspicious of us trading secrets back and forth. So literally they had to go to Hong Kong and meet and have conversations in the hotels down there to not be seen. It was so crazy. And, but the factories are very protective of their process and what they do. So, yeah, Jetta could have been Foxconn, but they're still Jetta. Okay, I'm going to just go forward a little bit. So value chain, this is your ecosystem. This is everything from your people, your process, and your relationships to make this thing work. I don't know if any of you guys work with big suppliers like Arrow Electronics or folks like that. Does that sound familiar at all? If you want really good pricing on, well, go to Greg over here. But if you want really good pricing on, like, 10,000, 100,000 chips, TI chips, and memory, these are the kind of companies you go to get really good pricing. But you get really good relationships around you that make all the difference. And so Foxconn brought great relationships to us because of their credibility. And we had this really good ecosystem. But create a value system around your company. It's a big difference. I'll point to Greg. Berkeley system. So partner in logistics. So at PlayEye, the guys that did Bo, the little blue robot that had the little flower in its hand. So I helped them with their crowdfunding, but also helped them with manufacturing, which is now at Jetta, and also logistics. So we talked to DHL, UPS, and FedEx, and other companies. The whole idea was we wanted to drop ship from China to avoid all retail channels, all distribution channels. Drop ship from China to your house, 5-pound box for less than $15. I mean, anywhere within 3 days, from Guangzhou, China, or Shenzhen to your house in Omaha, Nebraska, or San Francisco, California, for under $15 or less. And if you can do that, which we did, we negotiated with DHL to get that, and UPS is coming close, but we used DHL. But DHL gave us complete forward and reverse logistics. So they said, great, we'll deliver to your house in San Francisco, and if there's any returns, we'll take it back to our fulfillment centers locally, and then we'll process it. And I can tell you, that is something that is your operations right there. If you can get someone to deliver stuff for you around the world, cheap, fast, and reliable, and then take it back, I mean, that saves you a lot of capital. So I did that with PlayEye, and they have this beautiful system set up out of Guangzhou with DHL. That's for both individual and also bulk freight. So they'll bulk freight pallets and ship them to a distributor in the Netherlands. But they'll also ship an individual package to somebody in Lyon, France. So it's a nice system. This is I'm wrapping up, guys. So just a couple of slides here. So you kind of look at all this and what it means to each other. It's sort of hard to see. I'm sorry, I need to update this slide. User experience drives community. Manufacturing drives cash flow. Marketing PR drives retail sales. Logistics drives customer support. And brand value drives user experience. So these are the things that we learn that are interconnected to each other that make Pleo successful and people want to buy it. And I think that might be it. That's it. Okay. Thanks, everyone.